Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining. Welcome to our podcast. Let's talk about data. It's been long time we have been connected, but never online on any podcast. And let's see how we can take it up this hook thingy, which I'm very much excited to hear about.
Yep.
And being an essay, I will try to get into it as much as possible so our audience can really understand. I hope we can make a fight this that
hmm
through this podcast, if someone goes through this one, they will really understand what hook is.
Yeah.
Because you all know reading a documentation and listening from the inventor itself. So for our audience, can you please take your time, introduce yourself, and then we can go ahead.
Sure. My name is Andrew Fode. I'm originally from the UK. Have a nearly 35 year, I worked out earlier today, 35 year career. Um, about 17 years ago, moved to Australia, which is where I live now. And probably been working in the data and analytics space for the last 12 or so years. So prior to that, a lot of data work, but more kind of operational systems, designing databases, that kind of stuff. By trade, I would say I was a data modeler. I've been data modeling since the mid 90s from kind of relational modeling, and then obviously getting into analytics, a lot of Kimball stuff, Data Vault, and now some of the work that I'm doing with this approach.
So, okay, just for the audience, you are the inventor of hook, and we
Yes.
would love to understand what hook is. And you
hmm
all know that pirate hook, Captain Hook, and let's see how your hook connects with that hook and whether you are Captain Hook itself or not. Let's see.
So the idea of hook is that, or the theme of it, I guess, is hook is something you hang things on. So
Hmm.
that was the kind of picture in my head, from I guess from when I was very young, the first day at school, when we went into the cloakroom, we had all our bags with us, and we put our stuff on our hook, and we had our name above it, little picture of an animal, that kind of thing, but it organized all our stuff. So the idea being that all of my stuff was on my hook, my friends are on their hook, and so you could find all your stuff because it's you go to one place. So that was a kind of metaphor or idea in my head. Um, how it came about though was I was very much interested in Data Vault. I'm a certified Data Vault practitioner,
Mhm.
and at the time there weren't many projects around. Through through fate, I ended up working for one of the big four consultancy companies, and from so going from a small consultancy of 20 people to being acquired by this company, to a consulting firm of like 4,000. So it's like a huge step up. So suddenly the projects started appearing. So because of my expertise, and surprisingly, out of those 4,000 people, there weren't many people, if any, that had Data Vault experience. I got put onto a few projects, and the experiences of those projects started to make me question whether Data Vault is a good approach. And I can explain that in more detail. Um, but every project I worked on for this consultancy went sideways. Generally, it went sideways, and the main reason that I found was that to do data vault properly, you've got to follow the rules. You've got to absolutely follow the rules, um, and you need to invest time up front to make it work properly. So you need to do some modeling effort up front. So while you're doing that modeling effort, then what are your developers doing? So they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They've probably got timescales. They have to deliver stuff, and that was a general issue. Is that I would say, well, we need to do this modeling. We need to actually do some analysis. We need to speak to the business. We need to do all that stuff. And the development teams would be like, well, we've got to get stuff done. We've got to get reports out. We're on the hook for these deliverables. So I started to think, is there a way that we can almost separate the modeling away from the ingestion process or the getting the data into the warehouse? And that's where the idea came from. In that we Hook is like a is you can somebody described it as a veneer. You put it, you can layer it over the top of your existing architecture, and that's the beauty and simplicity of it. That using something as simple as views, you can layer over the hook artifacts without changing your underlying architecture. So if you've already got your ingestion patterns, you've already started ingesting data into your warehouse, you can then add the hook components over the top, which then brings you all the stuff you need from a warehouse, like the fact that the data is integrated, organized around subject area, around business keys, that kind of stuff. So you add a layer of organization over the top of your existing architecture without having to change your architecture.
Hmm.
So that's a real benefit.
Yeah. So when you're saying it is on top of it, as we discussed previously as well, that your hook comes at the layer of semantic. It's something semantic layer near to the business. And
Yes.
before you answer that, let me connect with the data vault and business vault, what we understood from XYZ places, that for data vault, you don't need a warehouse. Data vault replaces warehouse. Is that correct? And if does, are we saying that, as you mentioned, there was a challenge in data vault and you came up with this hook? So how this in whole ecosystem this hook sits?
So the focus for it for me was always around the data warehouse. And when I say data warehouse, I'm talking about the Inman definition for that. So I don't know if you've seen that defined, but basically it's a data warehouse is a subject-oriented, integrated, time variant, and non-volatile set of data items. So basically, you're loading data in, you're keeping history, and once it's loaded in, you don't change it. That's the data warehouse. Everything downstream of that, so things like your consumption assets, facts and dimensions, if you like, or your reporting assets, they're not strictly, in my terminology, would say that's not part of the warehouse. That's a downstream thing that you can derive from the data warehouse. So the data warehouse is essentially your fossil record, if you like, of what happened in the business. It's an audit. You should be able to go back at any point in time and say, this is what the world looked like to this point in time. And you can't change that. You can't go back in time and change things. So that was the understanding. So Hook kind of sits over the top of that. But by having that organization structure, it then facilitates the downstream stuff. So, for example, if you want to build your presentation layer as a Kimball style, I don't like to call it warehouse because it's not, a Kimball style structure, style schema, the business keys that are layered over your warehouse essentially points to the dimensions that you need. So you might have a business concept called customer. So if you've tagged all of your assets in your warehouse with customer, all you've got to do is look through those assets and go, well, if I need a customer dimension, then a good place to start looking for that information is in those assets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's an organizational structure that sits over the top of your raw data, essentially. So it facilitates that. Yeah. So although it isn't strictly speaking a BI tool, it does facilitate creation of those kind of assets.
Okay, awesome. So before we go technically in depth of Hook, right?
Yep.
I would like to cover from the business prospect, right? Like, do you have any success stories? How many customers you have implemented, or you are just doing R&D on it?
I would say it is R&D, but I've worked at two places where we've implemented this. So the first place was interesting, in that I came into the project probably about 6 months after they'd started. So the architecture was already established. So it was already established, and they were going down an approach of doing, well, it was a lake house type architecture, loading the data in. They had various layers, called them medallion. It wasn't like bronze, silver, gold, but they had various layers. But they didn't have any integration within the data, so it was very siloed. So you'd have each source system had its set of data, and it was just so not really what I would call a data warehouse. And they were producing facts and dimensions out the back of it for reporting purposes. So essentially going straight from raw to
Hmm.
facts and dims. So when I came in, I was like, well, we really need to kind of put something of this, give us some kind of organizational structure. So I presented it to them and showed them, demonstrated that I could just produce a set of views that I layer over the top of their existing data that they've got in raw, and suddenly you've got a warehouse
Hmm.
without changing anything. Just so, and that then made it much easier for us to look at our facts and dims. But then eventually we decided that the Kimball modeling probably wasn't the best approach for that particular organization. So we ended up changing that as well. And again, the Hook approach helped us do that. Because again, we still had that organizational structure that sat over the data warehouse. So we say, well, if we need an asset which is customers, we know which assets to bring into the picture. So we did minimal modeling, and it really was minimal. We could do probably 80-90% of our BI stuff straight off the raw with the Hook layer over the top. And then when there were edge cases which were hard, it's an example we had was trying to work out the burn down rate on a project. So we had data from project management system. How do you calculate that? And it's a kind of an accumulating total, which is difficult to do in a BI type environment. So we built a specific asset that represented that. And then we just implemented that. So we just implemented things as we needed. So it was really agile. It wasn't a case of having to pre-plan things. We go, right, first protocol is the data warehouse. If you can't do it out of that, or it's too hard, we'll build you a dedicated asset for that. And we probably built 3 or 4 of them. There really wasn't any much need to develop them.
Hmm.
So yeah, very good. So next place I worked, where I'm working now, we just brought that with us. Basically, it's the same team. We moved across, and we're just continuing with it. And the business so far have been very receptive to it. So yeah, very
Okay.
excited.
Yeah. So when you say you build these views on top of it, on top of raw data, which what we are understanding is if we are pulling data from 5 source systems, putting
Yep.
into somewhere in landing, which can be
Hmm.
in any form, and
Hmm.
directly onto when we say raw, it's a source data model.
Yes.
It comes as a source data model, and on top of that, you create it. But when you created the views on top of it, if it is in cloud, of course, I think we are all in cloud. What
Yep.
about this processing power? Because when you hit normalized tables, you pull everything into memory. There are a lot of consumption power required. Service,
Yeah.
clusters and nodes, all those things.
Hmm.
Won't that be a challenge?
Look, I always say this, that the laws of physics always apply.
Mm,
So, views are nice, they're flexible, but in some cases, performance just it doesn't make that practical.
mm, mm,
So there is no reason why you can't take those same views and physicalize them,
yeah,
or create pipelines that incrementally load those tables. At the end
mm,
of the day, all we're doing is calculating the business keys. So we can either do them on the fly in a view, or we can do them incrementally on once as we load the table.
mm,
The beauty of Hook, I guess, is if you want to change you discover new business keys, for example, or you've got a new concept. If you were doing something like Data Vault, you would have to create new links and hubs and all this kind of stuff, new structures, and then you keep the old one, and the thing starts to grow and sprawl, and it gets more complex than it needs to be. Even if you've got a physical table with a Hook approach, you can just copy the old table into a new version of the new table with the extra business key in there, and then drop the old one and swap the old one and back over the top of the new one over the top of the old one.
mm,
So they're in terms of being able to add and expand the model, it's really simple. So you're one source table, one hook table, essentially. You don't have
mm.
to restructure it, and links are a bane of my life whenever I've worked on a data vault process. It just causes issues. So the question I asked myself was, can you do it without links? Can you do data vault without links? And that kind of is what Hook is.
Okay, so adding a question on top of it. So you are saying what we are saying here is we are creating hooks for business requirement, for the very specific business requirement, which give me a our old friend OLAP cubes.
Yep.
Cubes we used to create. I heard people still creating it.
Hmm.
That was very business specific, but the challenge in Cube was housekeeping,
Yeah.
governance. People end up creating it, forget it to clean it, or rather never clean it because they never created it. Someone else created it. They were
Yeah.
very scared if audit comes, we don't have a audit trail XYZ. So what I
Hmm.
see here, Hook is if Hook comes in, you need to have a very strong data governance. If
Hmm.
some hook has been created and another business comes, someone need to know, hey, there is already a hook over there.
Yeah.
Don't recreate. How we manage that?
It's all driven by metadata. So you need to be able to keep. So essentially, you've got your source data coming in. You tag it. You tag it and say, right, these are the business keys.
Mm.
And then you prefix each business key with what I call a key set, which basically says what set of values it is. And that keeps you straight in terms of organizing the data. So if things change, like I said, if we create a new business key or a new concept comes into the mix, um, we still have the old view. We still got the old business keys, but we can add new ones in. So the impact is very low when we want to
Mm.
change the model. But the metadata that we've got, we would then track. So I've got a little which I can show you later if you like. I've got a little program which manages this. It's a little front end with some metadata that sits in a database, and it tracks this stuff. So when you change things, it keeps a record of every change that you made. So you can roll it back to a point in time and say, this is what my warehouse looked like structurally, not the data, but its structure. And this is what it looks like now. So you can see that you can do the impact analysis if you need to see what has actually changed.
Yeah, so actually, I intentionally throw this question because later on, when you'll show us the screen, which you showed me the couple of
Yeah.
hours back, you will show us when you bring something, you will tag it.
Yes.
Question was moreover, you don't create it and forget it. There is a screen, there is a tool which keeps
Yeah.
telling you this is the metadata. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So my next question would be, right, is this implementation a standalone or a add-on on an existing approach? Because
Well, like,
when the new things come, right, people are scared. Hey, do we need to
yeah.
scrap something which we have already invested? We
Yeah.
haven't done the ROI yet, and another thing comes in. So how you fit into the existing ecosystem?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, the impact is very low. You can layer it over the top of an existing architecture. And that's exactly the approach I took on the first project. I came in, they'd already established this stuff, and I said, we can layer this over the top. What have you got to lose? Because if it doesn't work and you've done it as views, say, you just drop the views and you're back where you started. So
Hmm.
there's zero impact, there's zero risk in trying it. You build some views. Try it first time with views. Obviously, you may have some performance issues, really large tables. But if the data volumes are small tables, it is perfectly legitimate to do a POC around that and to see how it works. If you don't like it, drop the views. You're no worse off. You don't have to change anything as long as the platform supports SQL and views. You can try it with no risk.
Okay, so that brings us out to our next question on cost.
Yes.
Is there an additional cost? And which you just answered that it's a layer on top of it.
Hmm.
And so I don't see any license, I don't see any product. So
I guess the only cost impact potentially is additional resources. If and again, like I said, laws of physics apply. It's
hmm,
like anything. If you've got a view that sits on a 2 billion row table and you're running a join on that using the business keys, which are calculated on the fly, it's not going to perform very well. So
yeah.
and that's going to ramp up your costs. And yeah, you can scale it out, but your costs are going to go up as well. So it really is just resources in terms of the actual overhead to maintain the metadata. If you have an automation tool like the tool that I can show you, it makes it kind of easy. You can set the metadata up. Now, that first place I worked, I think We had an initial system. One of the systems had like 600 tables, something like that. And because it was a pretty well designed system, they had a really consistent naming convention within it. So it was really easy for me to using the tool to go through and pick out the business keys because they were named a certain way. They were all ended in underscore ID and that kind of stuff. So if I was looking for customer ID, all the fields in the data was called customer ID. So I just need to go through in bulk and tag all of those fields and say that's a customer business key.
Hmm.
That takes 5 minutes, and then once it's done,
So
we
there's
just get
no $1 million addition on top of our current investment. And when you talk about resources, you're talking about manpower, bringing
yes,
a team who can
yes,
develop this approach.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And I guess the beauty of it is you don't need like high level data modeling skills for this either. You
Hmm.
need a good BA, and I've been working recently with a really good BA who gets this. He's all over this. He will go to the business and talk to them and go, "What are your business concepts? And where are the business keys?" And he will talk to them. So it saves me. I don't have to do much, to be honest with you. Maybe it's because I'm fundamentally lazy. I don't know, but it really the BA and can educate the business as well, and they get it. They get it. They see these business keys and they understand. Oh, look, I've got a business key which is a customer business key on this table and a customer business key on this table because they have the same name. I can join them together.
But
So
this guy need to know about this granularity of the both side, because if both table have foreign key, you end up into a
yeah,
Cartesian product.
yeah, exactly right. So this is something I always say to them. It says you need to be aware. Probably the most important thing you need to understand about your data is what is the granularity of that data. What is its
Yeah.
grain? Not what its business key. Not what its primary key is, because that's not the same thing.
Foreign
Not
key.
the same thing. What is the granularity of this thing? And understand that yes, when you are joining things, then if you've got multiple records on this side to this side, you're going to get a Cartesian join. They get it. They do get it. But I keep banging that message home. It's
That is where relating to this Papini bridge. I think
yes.
if we can bring Papini bridge into this equation, this
Hmm.
challenge will also be catered, right?
Yes, that's right. And as I said to you before when we talked earlier, I've been speaking with Francesco Papini about this because I see some really good synergies between his approach to BI and what we're doing with Hook. So I was basically talking to him saying, can we put our business keys onto the Papini bridge? And yes, absolutely. Which means you can just integrate, you can just treat that asset like any other asset in your warehouse, and you've got an integration across them. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now they're being Mustafa in an essay, which people don't like. I don't like a data guy to become an essay because then we become critical, right? And we,
Mhm.
we understand the data flow.
Yeah, I'm staying away from
Right.
the essay stuff. That's all yours.
Yeah. So two questions come
Yep.
on now. One is semantic. Second is creating something on top of the raw. Raw is nothing more than landing or slash bronze, which is in
Yes.
medallion, right? So
Yep.
what we are saying here is, okay, I will go to the bronze word later, but first semantics. So what we are saying is, so for me, 90% of the projects or data fails in semantic layer,
Hmm.
because semantic is where nobody cares, right? You
Hmm.
come into warehouse proper in Mon, you create star schemas or Snowflake, you end up creating maybe cube. Up to
Yep.
that level, you are very careful. You have a data model, fantastic. The
Yep.
moment you go into semantic layer, things goes out of your hand, because semantic we say open for business. Whatever shit what you want to do, you do
Yep.
it, and that is
Yep.
where you fail, right? So now what you are saying is, and I think what Papini Bridge also saying is, formalize or standardize or bring the right approaches in semantic. Are you saying
Yes.
that?
Yes. That's right.
Okay.
And I could talk about the Papini Bridge all day long as well, but it's just a really convenient way of just connecting your data, and that's all it's really doing. Um, Funnily enough, when I spoke to Francesco about this, it's also really important that you understand the grain of the data as well. So yeah, I think the Papini Bridge gives you I don't know whether I'd call it semantic. Semantic to me is that it puts kind of more business speak over the top of it.
Mm.
Papini Bridge for me is it's more of a mechanism that we use to connect assets
Correct,
together.
correct. So it's
Yeah.
not created something, it's something which fixed this Cartesian thingy.
Yes,
So
that's
yes,
right.
you are semantic, and Papini Bridge comes in, make things easier for
That's
drag
right.
and drop.
That's right. Yeah, and gets away from the fan out and fan in
Mm.
issues and all those kind of things. And when the first time I saw it, actually, I just didn't get it. I just didn't understand why it worked. But then when you look at I think he calls it the power of the union, isn't it? That each section, each stage, you're unioning across them, and it's like now I get it. It wasn't just one table with just connected. It's in sections, and that's what makes it really powerful. Um, so yeah, it's something we looked at and we use, and we try to evolve it. I also talked to him about the fact that within the Papini Bridge, it doesn't really take account of time travel.
Mm.
So I did do some work around it to try and make it put a time dimension onto it as well, so you could take a point in time.
Mm.
Um, and I spoke to him about it, and he basically told me I was being an idiot. He, he was like, he says, you just need to know what the grain of it is. It's like the message I give everybody, just whatever the grain of it is, then that's all you care about. So if time is part of that grain, then that's part of the key, and that's it. So I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, I got schooled.
Yeah, yeah, we had our days as well with Francisco. Okay. So
Yeah.
now next question. So cost is not a concern, implementation is not a concern. You are not replacing something existing, which is good.
Mhm.
Customer response and stories you mentioned, couple of customers you are already implemented. I think customers
Mhm.
are happy.
Mhm.
Challenges. What challenges you face while implementing this approach?
I guess it's just a little bit of a different way of thinking. So it's more of an education thing than anything else. Like I said, I keep banging away on the same messages, like you need to know about the grain, you need to do, you need to use business language and that kind of stuff. Because what I found, and probably have as well, when you speak to people within the business, they're so wrapped up in the systems that they use on a day-to-day basis that their entire language gravitates towards that particular system. So, and this is a perfect example of where I'm working just now. They're using a system, and they refer to customers as account users, not customers, but account users. Now, from a business sense, that makes no sense to me. It's a customer's a customer, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Employees or people who use the system from the business side are called support users,
Hmm.
not employees. So I explained to the business, and this isn't really a problem just for Hook. I think this is any methodology. So I go to the business and say, well, um, that's fine. You want to call these support users, but what happens when you bring the HR system into the mix? They're going to be using the term employee, and it's the same thing. So it's just trying to get that education that to say, right, you need to adopt a common language. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that because
Oh.
people are very kind of territorial, if you like. They have their areas and they want to stick to it. They don't really want, so different parts of the business potentially are using different language for the same thing. Okay.
Hmm.
So I guess in terms of maintaining a glossary, we need to keep aliases or pseudonyms and all that kind of stuff. Say when we talk about account users or system users, we actually mean employee. It's the same thing because
Ah,
what you don't want to do is go into them and start talking about taxonomies and
I was
ontologies and
about to say that. I was about to say that you are bringing taxonomies into it. Are we
exactly.
doing that because you are managing metadata, taxonomies
Yeah.
and then metadata. And when
Yeah.
we're talking about taxonomy, I think let's bring on ontology as well. Are you
Yeah.
saying that we need to? Okay, so see, okay, you have brought up a good
I'm
topic.
sorry.
So it's perfect for the audience actually, right?
Yep.
Because we are going in deep. When we talk about taxonomies and ontologies, taxonomy has a single relationship, ontology has multiple relationships, X, Y, Z. But in that, the really the both ends, the pointers are nothing more than concepts, right? Mustafa and you, X, Y, Z. and
Yep.
for all those pointers, there are synonyms sitting behind, right? So are
Yes.
you saying, because you're not talking about that relationship because those goes into NoSQL DB. We are talking about synonyms of all those taxonomies and concepts sitting. Are you going to bring that in your metadata as well to use?
I did have it there originally. So yeah, so we had concepts which weren't. So we have like core concepts. These are the ones that we've settled on, the one that we want to use
Hmm.
as the common language.
Hmm.
I think there's another layer we can add to that, which I kind of dabbled with, and I should probably revisit it, where we go, okay, there's context there, depending upon which part of the business we're talking about. So I mean, we might want to give it a different name, but
Hmm.
we still want to tie it back to the common name, and then store that relationship in the metadata as well. So we might go in HR when we refer to, oh, sorry, if we're in, say, I don't know, customer services, we're referring to account users, but that is actually what HR call employee. It's the same thing. And again, it's just a relationship in your metadata, which one points to the other, or they point to each other.
Okay.
So I
Awesome.
haven't got it implemented, but I think it should go in. Yeah.
Yes, actually, that brings my back to my the other question, which I parked for
Yep.
connecting on bronze or landing.
Yep.
And I'm very excited where we are going now. See, there's a virtual layer,
Yep.
right? After everything, which there's a concept of visualization. Businesses are still not mature enough. In past, virtual layer we used to call is a views, which is
Mhm.
hook, right? But
Yep.
virtual is more over near to business and hook fixing that problem. Your okay. Before we jump into it, just for the audience, we are saying we can create this hook into the virtual layer. That's what we are saying, right?
It's just a yeah. There's just some additional information that you're adding to your existing assets.
Yeah,
You're adding
which
business
is
keys,
virtual.
which yeah.
Yeah, which is virtualization, right? Now, my
Essentially.
idea was, uh, okay, I won't name the tool, but it's a very good tool on virtualization. It gives
Hmm.
an idea, connect this virtualization with all source systems. When it says all source system, it does not say only RDBMS, only Lakehouse. It says connect to everyone. And when we say
Yep.
connect to everyone, connect to source system directly.
Yep.
Then, of course, it comes to landing bronze, silver, gold. If you talk about medallion, and there are many other approaches, and
Hmm.
connect each layer as well to the virtual layer.
Hmm.
So, which really excited me, and which is fantastic actually, because to create a pipeline, it takes months or weeks or a few days, right? So
Yes.
you keep connecting that into virtual layer and let it expose to the business as soon as possible. It really fix the business problem, right?
Yep.
It really take the business, the TTM really down, time to market, right? So I
Yep.
think that's very, very exciting that hook can solve that problem because the moment you start connecting semantic layer slash virtual layer to the source system, that is where problems start coming in, right?
Yep.
Because there is a 3NF sitting over there. You create on a view on a 3NF, and then you create a view on star schema or bill and mon, results are
Yep.
different,
Yeah.
right? Results
Yeah.
are different. That is where everybody stucks, right? So
Yeah.
I'm very excited and very happy to hear that your focus on virtual layer, which is used hook, and you are very much there to create this hook onto the source models.
Yep.
Actually, also solve the business problem. I think we are going towards solving a business problem because
Yes.
in a warehouse lake house, if you want to introduce a new column, let's go one column into
Hmm.
a lake house, it will definitely take 1 week.
Hmm.
Development, UAT, testing, approval, promotion to the, all approvals to go to the production. It takes one
Yep.
week. 5 days
Yep.
is nowhere.
Yep.
But with the hook sitting over there, you can immediately connect it with the hook.
Yes.
And
Yes.
hook,
If they added it at source, you
yeah,
just put the hook over the top of it. If it's a business key, and then effectively it's integrated with every other asset in the warehouse, regardless of which source it's on, because it's just metadata.
that is where I'm coming to next. Day one, you connect it over there, and then you let your IT develop the pipeline. Let the
Hmm.
pipeline create it. And once it reaches to Star Schema or Snowflake, wherever, it has to convert into the same hook model
Hmm.
which you created based on the business understanding. Because end of the day, you're
Yeah.
creating business understanding.
Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, Hook doesn't care which layer it is. It's not a it's not a it goes across the whole warehouse. So you can
Right.
put it in as early as you can. So put it
Yes.
in into landing or you know, wherever you're I won't say landing because people have different ideas on what landing is. What's landing, what's raw, what stage, I don't know. It all gets very confusing. The persistent non-volatile layer,
Yeah.
the area that doesn't get changed, you can start there. Put it on top of that. So on our current project, we apply those business keys in bronze, which is essentially raw data. Yeah.
It is wrong. Yeah.
But then those keys are then flow through into silver and into the gold assets as well. So it's just so you can, if you want to do joins between gold and bronze and silver, it doesn't matter. You can use the same hook construct that goes across all of them to, so if you can pick a mix, you know, you can just
Yeah.
say, right,
Yeah, see. So the ideal way is from bronze onwards is again my methodology, my thought. After bronze, it has to be surrogate keys. People don't use surrogate keys anymore, but by right, business keys should not be used post bronze. Reason being, business keys
yeah,
can be lengthy composite keys as well, and there are a lot other challenges start coming. And I don't think you mind surrogate keys to be used as well, right?
that's right. So that was one of the things I've also noticed as well. The whole data vault thing is talking about business keys. These are kind of recognizable codes that you see on an invoice or on you know, so it's something that's you know, it's a VIN
Yeah.
number on a car. You know, it's these kind of recognizable keys. Um, and my personal experience of this is like, what, you know, like 20, if you go back 20, 25, 30 years, if you rang up your bank, for example, and said, oh, could you tell me the balance of my account? They'd say, what's your account number? And you're like, oh, I don't have it with me. Sorry, can't help you. Because the whole system is keyed on those business keys.
Hmm.
Nowadays, you can search on anything. You give me a name, you can give a date of birth, you can give some so it doesn't matter. So because of that, the designs of modern databases are based off surrogate keys because we don't really care about business keys.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare from an integration point of view. So what I basically said with Hook is, well, just accept it. If a surrogate key is still a business key, it identifies a thing. So yeah, we've got numbers. They're just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hmm.
But with Hook, what we do is prefix those keys with a what we call a key set, which basically tells us exactly what that key is. So
Hmm.
suddenly it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got a definition key set saying this is a customer number, and you're like, okay, now I know. Whereas if you just looked at the data, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be anything. What does that represent? You kind of guess from the field name, maybe. Might be misleading. I don't know. But by formalizing those business keys, you then have a map, I guess, of all your data. So surrogate keys, fine. And that's something um, Data Vault doesn't really do. It does talk a lot about, you know, we need to get the business key. So I'll give you an example. Say you've got a table which has got customer, you've got a customer ID, surrogate number, and then a customer number, two separate fields. They're both business keys that represent customer.
Hmm.
So you've got the business key on one table. So all the other tables that reference that table use the surrogate key. So that business key only exists on that one table. It doesn't
Yes.
exist anywhere else. So so with Data Vault, what you would tend to do is you would have to pre-join all those tables to do the lookup on the business key to bring it back into the assets onto, you know, so you can attach it to the right link or the right hub. So with Hook, we don't do that. We just go, they're just two business keys. And then we can still join after the event. So
Hmm.
in terms of getting the data in, there's no restriction. We don't there's no resources required extra when we're bringing data in. So if you've got fast streaming data or that kind of stuff, we're not slowing the process down. Whereas with Data Vault, you're going to have to do some lookups, and it could be really expensive.
Yeah.
So
So this brings up towards our time series, right? Historical data. So as hook
mhm.
is directly on whatever data model you have at backend, so it means you are not creating time series on your own. You are not creating dimensions on your own. No,
No,
whatever is down there, based on that you create. Is that correct?
that's right. So Hook doesn't care about time. It's only really cares about the business keys. So that's why I'm saying keep the ingestion of the data, getting the data in, and the organizing of it using your business keys and business concepts separate. Keep them totally separate. So I have a great deal of admiration for data engineers, especially the guys who work on bringing data, acquiring data from source systems, because
Mm.
every single source system is a challenge. They're
Yes.
all different. They're all difficult. But if we can say to them, bring them in this format, so we need specific audit keys, audit fields on them. So we need to know when we loaded it. We need to know whether it was an insert, update, or delete potentially. Those kind of things. Keep that standard, and if we have that, then everything downstream of that's easy, and we just layer those business keys over the top of those assets. But it's a separate process. Like acquisition, just let those guys go and do that. And when the data has arrived in the data warehouse, then we can apply the model to it using the business keys.
Yeah, so I think in this discussion we solve one business pain area, that time to market of new data components coming into OLTP system. You
Yep.
don't have to wait for the whole pipeline to finish via data warehouse or data vault or business vault. You could
Yep.
directly push it there and let rest of the IT work on it. So I will note down this thing and I will add into my other architecture. Okay. That's a good takeaway. So I'm a big fan of virtual layer actually, because
Mm.
since you go into a multi data store environment, you need to have a virtual layer. And
Yep.
virtual layer, I call it slash semantic layer. And semantic layer is where things goes out of hand, right? Because as I just mentioned, Cartesian thing is one of the very basic and most faced challenge for businesses. Hey,
Yes.
my table has $20,000. Why the hell there's $2 million over there? I say it's a Cartesian. You join foreign key to foreign.
That's right. Yes.
Don't do
And
that.
then when you add a time dimension into it, it just gets
You're all
worse.
gone. uh, because I will bug you to show us some if you have diagram or your tool. But
Yeah.
I have last question. How front end BI tool gets impacted due to this introduction of new approach?
Like I said before, this isn't really a BI specific tool. It can aid the process to build BI type assets, whatever they happen to be, because we've got an organization structure over our data. We can go, we need an asset which is customer. So
Mm.
I can look through my warehouse. I can look for the business keys which point to the concept of customer, and it gives me a list of which assets potentially we would be interested in to build those BI assets. So it enables us. It kind of makes it a
Enables us.
lot easier for us to identify the information that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't think there's a silver bullet on this. I don't think there's a hit a button and it just creates a nice structured, builds cubes for you automatically. Saying that, we the one of my data engineers, he's got some really good ideas around this. Strange enough, around the Papini Bridge,
Mm.
that the suggestion is that we could define a particular stage and build and have the metadata for that as a separate thing. So we've got all that information. The idea then being that if you want to build a Papini bridge, you just go, well, which assets am I interested in? I want that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. These are the tables I want to join together. And then you could hit the button and then it just builds the bridge for you, because
Yeah.
we've defined what each of those stages is. So he thinks that's doable. I think it's harder than he thinks, but I think it's doable. But that's the kind of thinking. In that case, that would really, really make it easy to build those BI assets, because we're just reusing the assets that we already have. It's just the way we connect them together.
Correct.
You can
One.
automate that in business.
So I missed one thing, this taxonomy ontology synonym which we are talking about, right? Because I'm working with Ross from Wand, if you know Ross, right? And working with Bill as well, Bill and Mon, right? They're
Hmm.
they're building their own taxonomies and ontologies, all those things.
Hmm.
Are we saying that we can bring those ontologies and taxonomies, all those, I would say, source of all those component, right? That employee can be I can be an employee, I can be a customer, I can be XYZ, all these synonyms. Can we bring those out of the box libraries and integrate with your hook?
Um, I guess so. Yeah, it's just metadata, isn't it, at the end of the
Yeah.
day? I always had a view that what we would do is that the business keys are based off business concepts. The business concept is just a thing within the business that we're interested in. It's a customer, it's an employee, it's a bill, it's an account, it's whatever. And each business or type of business has its own specific set of
Yeah.
concepts. But what you'll find is if you go to a bank, they'll have a set of concepts. If you go to another bank, they'll have a set of concepts, but they'll be pretty similar.
Yes.
So I think it's enough to go to a business and go, here's your starting list of business concepts. Okay. And then yeah, obviously the taxonomies, you can build that into that's just more data metadata on top. But I think if you go that you build those out, that gets you a real fast start when you go to a
Yes.
bank and go, there you go. I don't even have to talk to business. I'm just going to give you that list. Go to a utilities company and you talk about meters and bills and that kind of stuff. There's your list, and it's going to be pretty much the same as any other utility company. And I think that's there's a real benefit in getting that. And I don't think that's be too hard to do. You've just got to work with a few clients, and you'll settle on that list really, really quickly. And the list isn't that big. Generally, I would suggest absolute maximum number of business concepts, 150. That's a maximum. Typically, and I did discuss this with a guy called Remco Brookmans. I don't know if you know Remco. He
No.
he works he's a data vault guy, but he works for a company called Genesee Academy, and they've got an approach to data vault modeling called the ensemble modeling,
Hmm.
ensemble logical modeling, and he runs courses and stuff. And I asked him the same question. I says, how many typical hubs should you have in a typical data vault implementation? And he said maximum 100. Doesn't matter how complex the business was, 100 is probably the absolute maximum you would ever need. And he's been doing this stuff for years, and he's data
Yeah.
vault type. So yeah, absolutely. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's a short list. So you get a short
Yeah.
list for banking, you get a short list for, you know,
Yeah, because every domain has their own ontologies and taxonomies.
exactly.
I think
But
that
keep
is where this Vand and all these companies come into
yeah,
picture. They
yeah.
have pre-built ready available to quick start.
That's right. So the hook approach, I guess, we can implement taxonomies, subtype, supertype, that kind of hierarchy using the key set concept. So you pick a concept, say, I don't know, account might be your top level one. But then you've got different type of accounts. You might have a checking account, savings account, mortgage account, all this kind of stuff for a bank. When you look at the business keys, all you've got to do is you prefix the business key with the key set, which says this is a mortgage account. This is a so the taxonomy is built into the business key. It tells you exactly what it is. But it's still an account. But you
Yeah.
know what type of account it is because the business the key set tells you that. So that leveling of the taxonomy is catered for. There's lots of uses for key sets, but that's one of them to represent a taxonomy.
Yeah. So when this unstructured world come into picture and this graph DB, that is there's this taxonomies and ontologies got famous, right?
Yeah,
Especially when this Gen AI come into picture, that has become really, really, really famous. But I personally feel in structured world also we can use all these. Actually,
yeah,
we are using those in our head when we are
yeah,
creating a data model. It's not
yeah.
physically there, but logically it
Yeah.
is.
This is a little application. I'll need to share my screen. Hopefully, I can do it this time. Just bear with me.
Yeah, I already allowed. No, yes. That's
Right. So, and share. You see that? Should that come
Yep.
through? There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So this is an application that I've been tinkering with and developing and adding bits and then chopping bits out for probably the past couple of years. And it's just I've kind of built it not as a product to sell, more of a tool to help me do my job or to get stuff done. So, and I'll talk about a lot of these concepts already, but this is the first tab. There's three tabs here, but the first one is glossary. So this is that list of business concepts.
Hmm.
So This one is where I'm working at the moment. This is a utilities company. It's actually an energy retailer. So they basically sell electricity to their customers. So
So this
these are
is,
some,
sorry, yeah, this is the concepts which we are talking about taking from taxonomies and ontologies, right?
yeah. So these are the kind of the business. These are the things that the business are interested and care about.
Yeah.
So they're interested in accounts. They're
Yeah.
interested in account users, customers, addresses. They're interested in campaigns and
Hmm.
complaints and connection points, and then there's finance stuff like cost centers and GL accounts, and then there's geography stuff. So it would be like
Hmm.
postcodes and regions and that kind of stuff. Um, and then there's other very specific stuff around them. But
Hmm.
that's kind of a list that we've been evolving over the past since the start of the project about 6 months ago. So we'll
Hmm.
add to this, but there's probably what 40, 50 there. So there probably won't be a huge number. I think that's probably okay. So that's the list of business concepts. So these will form the basis of the business keys that we eventually have. So the other thing is the sources. So I've got a whole bunch of sources here. I'll look at this one. It's the system we're using is called Kraken. It's an energy retail type product that's developed in the UK that we happen to be using at this company. It's quite well known apparently,
Hmm.
and quite well designed, very nicely. The database structure is actually somebody gave it some thought, which is unusual, I think, in this day and age. So you'll see there's some kind of consistent naming conventions. So that's Kraken. We've got five schema here. These are different kind of modules within the application.
Okay,
Uh,
five schemas.
going
Okay.
yeah. So so the consumer is like the main core one. Voice is to do with voice calls. I think they record calls, phone calls, and they record them digitally. Ink is communications, written communication, so there'd be letters and that kind of stuff.
And these numbers in front of these schemas are number of tables inside each schema, right?
Number of tables that I've ingested into the system. So there are actually more than that, but these are the ones that we've brought into the warehouse. So we've got
Okay, these are
100.
the ones you pulled from left to right. You pulled it. Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah. So these are in our bronze layer, if you like. This is what
Okay.
this is in there. So you can go into each of these. So if I double click that one, that lists all of these tables here. And then so I can go and click on, say, the account table, and then I've got here a list
Hmm.
of the fields that are in there. So this is
Okay.
where we can start pulling out business keys. So we can go, for example, we've got an ID field here.
Hmm.
Uh, Now, every single table on this particular system has an ID field. It's basically the
Hmm.
primary key. It's a surrogate. It's a dumb surrogate key.
Hmm.
It has no meaning other than identifying it. But all the foreign keys refer to this. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that it's not really what a lot of us would consider a true business key. It's a surrogate. Uh, but they do have a number. And that is the customer number that gets printed on the top of their bill. So this is the way that you would recognize it. But they are both business keys that identify the account.
Hmm.
So we just pull them out both as business keys. So that's just as simple as you take the account, you say what the key set is, what identifies it, you
Hmm.
drag the ID and you drop it on there, and that's it tagged. So and we just go through there and like dates, for example, we can drop those. So I've got a concept called epoch, which is basically any time related stuff. So we've got things like date, time, season, um, billing period, week numbers, contract years, whatever kind of time variant. So although it's the concept is epoch, meaning time, we've got subtypes. So these are essentially our subtypes. These are taxonomies, essentially. Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of a time series you've brought it in into your system.
Well, all I'm saying is we can take any of those date fields and tag them, and then pull those fields
Ah.
out as business keys. So we can then join them together. So then we can have like a date. I won't call it a dimension. We can have a date asset which uses
Hmm.
the same business key, and then it has like what's the day, what's is it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Is it what financial year and quarter is it in? All that kind of those are just attributes like a date
Hmm.
dimension, and you just
Hmm.
join those in to anything which has that as a as a
Hmm.
key, a
Hmm.
business key. So it's kind of real simple. So we're just tagging this stuff. So And I say you can pick any of these, and I've added them in, and I've got tools in here which enable us to do kind of bulk allocations. So we don't have to go through each one at a time. You could potentially go right, look for anything which has, I don't know, account ID in it, and just tag it as account ID. And then
Okay.
yeah, so I don't have to go through each table individually. Yeah. Um, so that's the tagging. So once we've done that, it really is a case. Let me just close that. As I can go in and create the asset. So essentially, what I've done here is each of those tables is create the terminology I'm using. I'm kind of questioning it now. Is that when we apply the business keys and we create an asset, I call them bags basically because you take your asset, you put it in a bag, you put hooks on it, and you hang it on the hooks. So that's the
Okay.
kind of visual I was trying to go for, but I kind of gone off the idea. So anyway, the idea then is you've got a source table, but we've got the option then to rename it. So we can call it something different. Yeah, something more businessy and you know user friendly. So the original table, if I'll show you this, the original table was called accounts underscore account.
Mm-hmm.
A bit unnecessary, so I just called it account. And you'll see that a lot of these have been renamed. And we've gone to the business and validated these and said, are these the names you want to use? But then you look at each of these, and sorry, let me just move that out of the way. I don't know if you're seeing that. Each of the fields that we tagged before, you then assign because you don't just because you tag them doesn't mean you have to pull them out as business keys. You can ignore them. But I've mapped them all here, and I says, okay, this first one here, ID, that is mapped to that particular key set, and it's an account. And then I have the option because if you have two keys business keys for the same concept, then they would result in the same name. So you have to qualify them. So you've got the option to add a qualifier to distinguish between them. And I'll show you what that kind of looks like later. So yeah, you go through all these, you tag them, make sure this all lines up, and it's just metadata. So once you've got that, you can then there's a little templating engine in here. So I'll show you this. So
end of the day, you're building a metadata as of now.
yeah, this is all stored in a database behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So then I depends on how I want to implement this. In this case, I've got a little template here. And if I just hit the button on there to build it, it'll go away, all the metadata out of the database, slot it into the template, and we'll
It's
sniff
creating a
that.
DDL at backend, is it?
This one is, yes, yes. So this takes a few seconds. Just bear with me. And as if by magic, demo gods aren't with me. It doesn't normally take this long.
No, I will do just what Google did, right? In Gemini.
Here we go. Here we go. Right.
Okay.
So there you go. Spits it out. So let's look for that account one. I don't know if it's if it's in order. Yeah. So here's that account one there. So the template just has all this kind of stuff as boilerplate. Assuming, I said earlier that we want kind of standard columns on our bronze stuff. When we loaded that kind of stuff. So we can use that as our timeline. So this is just standard that we put on every single one. If you look at each of these bits of DDL, they're all the same. And then we've got the business keys here. So it's just built from the metadata. So it's got the name. See, we've got account here. We've got a BK account. So this is that ID. This is built off the ID field here. And it's got it's got the key set of Kraken account ID. But we had a second business key in there for the same concept, and that's this one here. But because it's the same concept, we have to qualify it. So I then add this is the account number. Okay. But we can go to any other asset potentially to any other asset, and if they have a key in there called BK account, we can join to it. We should to join to it, and we won't get any ambiguous type joins. So, for example, if I had another table which had built off the ID field and tried to join it to this BK account number, because they have different key sets, you won't get a join, which is exactly what you want. You don't want an artificial join,
Hmm.
So obviously, customer one is not the same as account one. So if
Hmm.
you just use the surrogates, that's a legitimate join. You could do it, and it doesn't make any sense. So by formally prefixing these business keys with the key set, you eliminate that risk. Okay. And then there's some standard stuff around how we calculate the string. So for numerics, we do a cast, and that again, that's all built into the templates. If it's a date time, then we'll do this cast here. So this one is built off Databricks. So this is kind of Databricks style. And so that's why you might spot the
Yeah.
odd strange thing which doesn't, like date format is a particular function within Databricks. So there's no reason why you can't have a different template for different platforms. So
Yeah.
it's agnostic to
So,
the
so this
environment.
kind of DDLs created, right? Are you saying this DDL you will go and copy paste and run it, or
Yep.
it has already run it?
No, I thought about that, whether we should have it push it to the target database. We could do that. It is doable, but it doesn't do that now at the moment.
Okay.
So basically, it's like copy it
Yeah.
and then push it.
So second,
Um,
where do you define that your target system is which database? Because every database has a yes, less than 1%, 2% syntax difference. How you
yeah,
cater that?
well, that's right. I would just create a different a specific template for that target environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now,
So,
how many DBs you're targeting? Because as you mentioned, this is for
but this is
Databricks.
warehouse. There's only going to be one for the target warehouse.
Sorry?
So the thinking here is that when we're pulling the data into warehouse, so okay, not virtualization, say, but we're pushing the data into warehouse. There's really going to be one platform. It's going to, in this case, it's Databricks. Other places I worked, it could be Snowflake or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So if you want to put these, it's a very good point you make, actually. If we want to fully virtualize and we've got different sources on different platforms, we would need to know what that is. So I
Then
think again, that's an enhancement we could look at. That we
do put my
have.
name. Do put my name somewhere.
I
Okay.
will. I've got them written down. You get credit for that one. Absolutely. I hadn't actually thought of that. It's good. But yes, potentially we could say, right, because I know this table is sourced from this platform, use this template. And we have multiple versions of the same template that have slightly different syntax in for targeting that particular platform. Again, everything's doable, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a really good idea because I hadn't actually thought of it in terms of acquiring data from and virtualizing from different sources on different platforms. The thinking was always we're going to be pushing this data into a common central platform. So therefore,
Actually,
there is only
yeah,
one.
actually, there are two things, right? One is you're reading.
Yeah,
Second, when you're creating a views, when
yeah,
you're creating a views, you need to know your target DB as well. If
yeah,
it is a
yep,
Databricks separate syntax, SQL
yep,
separate syntax, Oracle separate syntax.
yep.
So do you have separate syntax DDL creation as well, or you create just for one
Yeah.
DB?
So at the moment, if I was doing it that I would probably go. I'd have a different template for each,
Ah,
slightly different template. But what I think we should do is have one template with multiple versions, one for each, one for
yes,
each. Yeah.
yes.
So essentially, it's the same basic code, but we might have to vary the syntax depending upon the target. So again, I think that's an enhancement I can look at. But we are looking to take this. This is a desktop application. It's written in .NET. It's got a SQL Server backend,
Mm-mm-mm.
and we are looking at maybe porting. Well, not maybe. We want to port this to an environment where it's more kind of web-based, I guess. So we have options then to implement it on pretty much any platform we want, whether it's in the cloud or
Yeah, yeah. Your
even
success, yeah, your success comes once your product becomes SaaS, ideally, but
yeah,
you throw it as a pass as well. But pass, sometimes the challenge is pass is very, it's not free. It's pass is very strict. Whatever you have it. SaaS is something you can you can enhance yourself and you can
Yeah,
manage. Yeah.
yeah,
So if you come up with a SaaS model, that will be great actually. And
yeah,
sitting
yeah,
in especially Azure, AWS, and Google, at least three places. Yeah.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, but the fact is, templated means that we don't have to. It doesn't have to be SQL. We could generate other things. So where we're
Yeah.
working now, we have a they have a framework. So basically, rather than DDL, I give them a YAML file which has basically the same information in, and then the framework then picks that up and then generates the assets straight off the YAML. So I'll give you an example of what that might look like. And again, this is all generated. So this is that same account.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, right, okay, here's what the name of the asset's going to be called. This is
Mm-hmm.
the this is where it came from, and this is the list of business keys. And it says, right, what's the name of the key? What's the key set? And how do we calculate, or how do we cast the value of the business key to a string? So just use that. He takes that, he drops it into a particular directory, and some magic happens, and the table appears in silver. It's simple.
Okay, I'm going to bring one more angle into this one because this is
Yeah,
again very exciting, right? Okay, the
yeah.
big right now happening. So with this Gen AI is here.
Hmm.
Gen AI normally works on unstructured piece, but
Hmm.
nowadays people are asking for structured piece as well.
Hmm.
So for structure piece, yes, you have SQL agents, XYZ. You have a front end chart. You chart the LLM converts that chart into a SQL, and
Hmm.
SQL goes connect to the source system, pull the data.
Hmm.
The data comes out, they throw that data into the LLM. Now LLM has a question, LLM has an answer, and correlate and throw it out, right? But when question comes into LLM creates a query. That is
Hmm.
where there is a big disconnect. How
Hmm.
to create a query? Because
Yeah.
query, as you mentioned, taxonomies, all concepts has to be there. Mustafa can be an employee, Mustafa can be a customer in the
Hmm.
same bank, right?
Hmm.
That your LLM won't know because
Yeah.
LLM has been trained on a generic Wikipedia, XYZ, all those libraries.
Yes. Yes.
So how I'm going to next level, right? This tool can be a game changer as well. I don't
I,
know how.
I
Yeah.
hadn't. Well, no, I'm just thinking about it now, actually. So, like you say, to generate a SQL, you need some kind of inherent knowledge of the underlying
Yes.
data structures and what the
Yes.
keys are and what the foreign key relationships are and
Yes.
all that kind of stuff. So, if you haven't got that and you can't feed, you haven't got it to feed in, how are you going to do it? Now, the fact we've got business keys that follow a standard,
Mm,
straight away, the LLM will be able to pick up on the fact that, well, okay, if I see anything which is prefix BK
mm, mm.
portfolio, I'm probably going to be able to join it to any other asset which has got BK portfolio in there.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a hard ask to work that out. So and you probably wouldn't even need an LLM to do that. You
Yeah,
could
you don't need LLM, but the thing is, LLM you need when I say, hey, tell me how many employees
yeah,
has salaries.
yeah,
So this conversion you need actually.
yeah, yeah,
And so once that convert, it's try to go and find out that. When find out that, it should come to your metadata,
yeah,
whatever you have built it
yeah,
look into it, and based on that, it goes and create a query. That's what
yeah,
I'm thinking. So this is the angle I'm looking, right? That where if your this metadata creation, because this is beautiful what you have created, because what you
mhm,
did is you created the assets, and based on the assets you end up creating a query,
mhm,
right? So can we connect LLM, and not to forget your assets are nothing more than taxonomies and ontologies concepts,
yep,
right?
yep.
We ask LLM to go and talk to your assets. Will it make it more easy for LLM to generate a query?
I'm thinking probably yes. I not really au fait with the technologies. I'm a little bit suspicious of the whole AI thing. But the fact that we're giving a consistent structure,
Yes.
it can't hurt. It must help. You're giving it more information about the underlying assets
Yeah.
without having to provide what are the foreign key relationships? What is that level of metadata that you
That's
would probably
missing.
need? Yeah.
Yeah, that's missing right now. Actually, what I can do, I have one podcast called as RAG with VectorDB. Maybe if
Yeah.
you get time, you just have a look. It's
Hmm.
just a part one. We are
Yeah.
going on more technical depth. How this guy is very technical on RAG. He has done it by on his own
Yeah.
hands. He is making us go through a step by step, right? So
Hmm.
maybe one of the part I pull you in
Yeah. Okay.
when we are working on this structure piece, how he generates the query, I
Yeah.
put you in into that session, and then we bring this to him and ask him, hey, how when he's generating and can his LLM talk to your metadata?
I'm gonna talk to my guy as well because he's definitely talked about this kind of thing before. It's a little bit over my head, to be honest with you. And he talks about these rags and the LLM type stuff and how vector databases, all that kind of stuff.
So
Way over my
maybe
I'm not
maybe
that technical.
yeah, maybe we can have one more podcast. You will bring your guy in. We all come in.
I'll
It
talk to him. He
actually it'll
probably
be
won't
good
want to
for
do it.
my
I'll talk
it,
to him.
it'll be good for my podcast actually.
Okay,
Okay, now Lex, sorry for stopping you up. Yeah.
that's fine. So that's it. That's really all I needed to show you. It's just really there's not much to it. There's some very simple concepts. It's
Hmm.
basically business concepts, business keys, key sets. That's it. And it's just all management metadata. And we have the options with a templating engine to be able to paint that in different ways, whether it's DDL or whether it's YAML files or JSON or XML or whatever we want to do.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's getting there. It's quite exciting that to see something that kind of came out the back of your head and see it in action, and know that it's the way to go.
I can see three more sessions coming out of it. One is we bring your guy in,
Yeah,
we discuss this taxonomy, the ontologies.
yeah,
Second one is our data vault. I want to
yeah,
do a podcast on data vault as well. Uh,
yeah,
and actually, one more session we can have with on Papini Bridge as well.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Get
will be
French.
that will
Let's
be a
set up.
good. You chat with him. I will also ping him. His session
Yeah,
is somewhere in December.
yeah,
Why don't we pull that session up front? Because this session is already recorded now.
yeah. Okay.
It'll be good to bring that Papini Bridge session now
Yeah.
and talk. Okay, I think we are good on that angle. Do you have any diagram on hook? Sorry to.
I did a presentation uh, to a group in Europe a couple of years back now. So it's really big in Germany, Data Vault. So this guy organizes Christian Kohl. I don't know if you've heard of him. Um, he leads up this data management get together meetup group.
Okay.
So I got invited along to that, and I had a deck that I did for them, which probably not too far off the mark, would probably be
Mhm.
useful. So I can certainly share that. Like I said, it's still evolving. There's little things like, oh, what about this thing? And I tweak things, but it's reasonably stable in terms of it's not changed much in the last year, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what we have done, what is kind of changed our approach to modeling itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we've kind of the term we've called is the style of modeling is called GEM. We call it GEM, just enough modeling. So
Okay.
so I mentioned earlier that the idea was is that you don't do too much modeling. You only model by exception. So if there's something as a specific use case or something that's just too complex to get out of, say, your silver layer, you build that asset. So that's the gem approach. So because 80% of your use cases are going to come straight out of silver. It's only those edge cases that yeah. So, but even then, those assets are still in the same general structure as they are in silver layer anyway. So yeah, those kind of things I need to add in and start to describe and give examples. And there's a few other things that kind of, oh, that's a good idea. Could you add that in? How do we manage that scenario? So
Mm.
um, they're a bit out of date, but I can certainly share them.
Awesome. Awesome. I think it was a great session. And I think after this session, I can very well inject your approach into my own DAS architecture.
Excellent. Yeah.
And it's a win-win situation for us because we have solved this, not solve, we are moving, we have the direction to solve this semantic layer issue. Because
Yeah.
semantic layer, as I mentioned, is one of the biggest failure. Nobody
Hmm.
knows what's happening over there. So Papini Bridge and Hook can really work into that area.
Yeah.
And secondly, this time to market thing, that
Yes.
whenever a new column added into OLTP system to bring it to the front end user, so
Yeah.
it takes weeks to bring it. This can be done on a click, or
Yes.
less than a day, because you just need to
Yes.
drag it
Tag
and
it, tag
yeah,
it, generate it, done. Yes,
done.
absolutely.
Yeah, so these two things are takeaway for me. Okay, awesome. Andrew, again, pleasure. I
Great to
don't
talk.
find
No, I really enjoyed it. It's a good session. I sometimes think I go on a bit too much about stuff, just keep talking to people because it's something I hate saying I'm really passionate about it, but it's something that is really dear to my heart. I feel there's a shift in the industry required. Things need to be made simpler, not more complicated.
yes.
And this was always the goal for this. It's the simplest possible approach that we can take to this.
Yeah, so I really love this session, and I'm sure this is going to be a hit soon.
Okay.
And if we are able to join this LLM world with your this
Okay.
metadata and creation, I can tell you right now, I'm already in 10 to 15 discussions where people are struggling to
Okay.
get out of a right data from LLM, structured right data from LLM.
Yep.
Pulling the data, no problem. Converting natural language into a right query, that's a challenge.
Yes. Yes.
So think
But
about it.
doable. It is
Yeah.
doable. It is doable.
It's doable. It's
Yes.
always doable. I keep telling people you have to bring in taxonomies and ontologies
Yes.
and all those things, which we are already talking, but we never had a physical materialized solution, which I can see in your tool,
Yeah.
where you
Okay.
tag it and you
Yep.
have a systematic metadata sitting there with taxonomies and ontologies.
Yep.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you so
Excellent.
much,
Great chat.
Andrew. Catch up later.
Yep.
Awesome.
Will do. All right. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Take care.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Cheers then. Bye.